The rhino is an extraordinary, important animal. And one has only got to look back into the history of our country to see that at Mapungubwe there was a finding of the little golden rhino that had been found in one of the graves. So that animal had great spiritual importance. And I know this from my own experience through the very first time that I saw the rhino. It made a tremendous impact on me. This rhino coming out of the bush, and it was a very misty day, and I could just feel this great spirit. They represented this wild Africa. And we owe it to the rhino to make sure that they survive in our country. Because it is because of the rhino that all the parks came into being. The Umfolozi Game Reserve, the Shishiri Game Reserve, Isimangoliso, all came about because of the white rhino. Because the white rhino was thought to be extinct, and then they found some down at the junction of the Black and the White Umfolozi River. And as a result of that, Natal was in a colony that the governor was petitioned, and the public forced him to declare these reserves. And from these reserves, all the others have grown. So we owe the game reserves, we owe them to the white rhino. In 1952, I met Makubu Ntombela, who had spent his entire life in that reserve. From the age of 14, he and Malim Leche and Mankenke and Leche were actively involved in looking after the rhino. And at that time there were no more than about 50. And they were under the command of Major Vaughan Kirby, who was the conservator. But it was from that very small population of 50 in the early 1900s, 1920, 1924, that the population slowly started to grow. And by 1953, when I joined what was then the Natal Parks Board, now Izimbelo, that population had grown to 437. And I know this because I did an aerial count with Ranger Hendrik van Schoor, and together we counted this 437 rhino. By 1961, those numbers had grown to close on 600. And that's what led to Operation Rhino, because we knew that if we didn't start taking the rhino out of Umfolozi, and if a diseased cow with anthrax got in there, it would wipe the rhino out. And so, thanks to an English veterinarian, Dr. Tony Hartwell, and a wonderful team of men, Nick Steele and Makubu Ntombela, and Owen Letley and John Clark and others, we started to catch the rhino. And one of the first places that we took them to in 1961 was to the Kruger National Park. And from that small population that we delivered there, had grown these large numbers. And then we took them to the Orange Free State, down into the Eastern Cape. And then from there we sent them overseas. So Operation Rhino became recognized as one of the greatest rescues of animals in the history of our country. And then in 2007, the killing began. And since then, something like, well, more than 2,500 rhino have been killed. And this is doing our country an enormous amount of harm. And if this killing rate continues, the ripple effect will have a serious impact on South Africa.